Well, no mushroom cloud of doom, so there's that.
Right? Um, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Matteo's Corner, good old pizza crew. Um, Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different for the channel. We're going to be doing a tier list or something kind of similar to a tier list. I thought it would be really fun to talk about some game series and go through my thoughts on the games and where I think they stand. But I could not do this topic alone. I needed somebody who knows a lot more about survival horror than I do, because we're talking about Resident Evil today. And I thought I should get an aficionado on the subject. And we have today my dear friend Lonely. Hi, Lonely.
Howdy.
How are you today?
I sure am.
I feel that on a grand cosmic scale, honestly.
Honestly, I'm really flattered you want to chat about this with me.
But yes, I mean, we talk about stuff all the time, and like I was saying earlier, for your intro here, you know a lot about survival horror and a lot of other stuff, and I figured if I'm going to make a tier list, it should be with somebody who actually can put more than just, oh, I looked up a Wikipedia page on what the differences are for some of these games, because I have not played all these games. I've played Survivor, though. That game can go burn in hell.
It most certainly can.
So how do you think we should start this here? Do you think we should just stick to main games first and then do other stuff after the fact?
Uh, I think for the sake of our sanity, because the spin-offs, it's kind of like when the Roomba hits the wall and goes into a random direction, we're just going to be going in random directions all over the place, so yeah, no. The main stuff first.
Okay, main stuff first. So then I guess we should start with... Okay, so now the big question. Do we count Director's Cut as the first game, or do we also include the original Resident Evil?
Yeah, I would say so, though. I kind of hold them as somewhat one and the same. I know there's a few differences, but for me the main differences is just the soundtrack.
Okay, and I actually apparently was looking this up before we even decided to do this, and it said that you can play the original version of the game without the director's cut stuff in it, but I don't remember you being able to do that when I had the game on PS1.
Yeah, I do not remember that either, though it has, admittedly, it's been a while for the original one.
Okay. Okay, if we're gonna lump up Resident Evil 1 and Director's Cut into the same game just for the sake of sanity, because like you said, there are some differences, but if I remember correctly, it's just item and enemy placement. The really wonky soundtrack, but even with soundtrack aside, the game is still the same game.
Yeah, again, there's differences, but I would kind of feel like,
Okay.
if you've never touched the original and you've only played the director's cut, you haven't really missed anything.
Okay. What do you think would be the optimal placement? I think it's still like either an A tier or a very solid high B tier. But I don't know. That's just me. I'm not a survival horror guy. Maybe the pitchforks will come out for me saying this.
Well, first of all, let's go over what are the tiers. What is the grading system?
Yes, this is the very first time I'm doing a tier list, so I should talk about that. Good point.
Yeah.
So here's how. Yeah, so here's how I do tier lists, going forward anyway. So S tier. S tier is I would highly recommend this to everybody, even if they don't like the genre. These are the games where I ride or die. S and A are kind of the same, but A is a slightly lower. It's not like I would immediately recommend this to anybody, but this is something that I am going to play all the time, right? Like, this is my thing. So S and A are kind of the same. B tier is kind of like the middle tier. Those are the ones that I'm like, yes, these ones are very fun. I might not recommend it to everybody, but there's still a very good time. I'm glad I played this. D tier is the tier I like to call the it exists tier. Like these are the ones where if you play it, like that's cool, but it's not my cup of tea. I probably wouldn't play it again. I don't really have a fondness for it because there's no game, in my opinion, not even just games, just in general. There's nothing that says that something is so terrible, like it's an F rank. I don't think the F rank is the only time I would give something an F rank if it was like big rigs over the road racing where it's not even a finished game.
Yeah, it's unplayable. It's not even a thing. It does not exist. It is just there.
Right. So yeah, so in terms of the ranking I just gave, I would give Resi 1, whether it's the original or the director's cut, like a solid like B tier. It's right in the middle. It's very cheesy, it's very fun, it's not easy. But especially with the director's cut, the soundtrack's a little goofy, but
Yeah, for reasons we
yes.
won't go into. That could take up an entire video on its own.
Yeah, and I am not the one to talk about that because, like I said, I don't really know all that stuff. But what about you? You who is your stacking also comes into play here. What do you think about the OG Resi?
The original Resident Evil. It's like I'm gonna try really, really hard not to squish nostalgia into that, but it's gonna be really, really difficult.
No. This is part of it. My take is the one who's not into survival horror. Yours is the one who is. This is why I asked you to help. We have both sides of the coin.
Alright, honestly, I would put the original at a pretty solid A tier. It's a good entry into survival horror, just in general. This is a game where if someone's like, I'm not really sure if I'm into survival horror, I would eagerly hand them a copy of the game if they were into like more retro stuff. Because yeah, the tank controls can get a little please end me now, but for the first game, unless you're dealing with the dogs, it's not too bad. I think the only thing that I really don't like about the first Resident Evil is kind of a problem I've had with Resident Evil for a while, and I'm sure somebody's going to be angry at this. I find their puzzles not very engaging, and I think that's the only really downside to some of the older games, is just the puzzles are not take thing, rub thing against another object, there you go.
I think that, though, is a little biased on your part because you're more of a Silent Hill fan.
Oh yeah, no, Silent Hill spoiled me.
Silent Hill's a good game. That's a series that I at least want to play the first 3, and I'll dabble in the other ones, but I have memories of the first Silent Hill. That game's great. But okay, that's a fair point.
That said, if you do a list for Silent Hill, I am going to creep into your voice chat whether you want to or not, but
no, I honestly
I am going to be there.
Honestly, I wouldn't mind. I would at least want to play a little bit of all the games first.
Yeah, no, it is mandatory. You cannot make a list unless you've at least, had some time with them.
Yeah. I'm pretty confident with putting the first Resi in A tier, because you're right, it is a good... I mean, hell, PlayStation alone released in their PlayStation Plus thing when they started doing PS1 games on the PS5 and the PS4 again. They added Resi 1 Director's Cut as one of the first games that you could get. It's a classic. It's cheesy in all the right B-movie ways, but it's still scary at some points. It's challenging, and if you're not used to these games, you might have some trouble, but it is way easier to jump into this game than, like, Silent Hill or some of the other games out even nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would absolutely recommend, as much as it pains me, I would put Resident Evil over Silent Hill for any newcomers to survival horror. As I absolutely love Resident Evil, don't get me wrong, but I am horribly biased when it comes to Silent Hill. So, but
All
yeah,
good.
so that is a fair assessment.
Because we're talking about Resi 1, we're not going to talk about remake yet because I think that all the remakes and remasters should be a total separate thing. However,
They should.
I do want to include Deadly Silence for the DS because it was Resident Evil 1 on the go as a handheld game.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, because they picked classic Resident Evil 1 and not the remake or some other game, I think it actually is pretty decent on the DS. The only things that I remember about that version, because a friend of mine had it and I got to play it, there were some tedious things you had to use the touchscreen for, if I recall, because it was the DS. Of course they did. But
Yeah.
your inventory system and your map and all that stuff, I think, if I remember correctly, was on the bottom screen, which was really
That's
helpful.
nice.
Yeah. So I'm willing to put Deadly Silence into like the B or C category because it's like we didn't need this, but for a lot of people, this was their first time playing Resi 1. But it's not. It's definitely not as good as the original because it was on less powerful hardware, which is funny to think about because PS1 compared to DS. But you know, here we are. But so yeah, I would put it. I don't know, C, low B, something like that. It's playable. It's fine.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the only thing that really holds it back is really just the gimmick angle
Yeah.
of it, where it's like, okay, we've got this touchscreen, you had better use it.
Well, if it was just the fact that they used it for a map and the inventory, I would have been fine with that because it's like, okay, yeah, you can click your stuff without having to pause the game.
And that's
But
nice.
yeah, but in defense of the original game, I feel like pausing the game to pick your stuff gave you a moment to breathe amid all
Oh,
the
it
stuff happening.
absolutely did.
So yeah, that's why I'm probably just gonna put it. I don't know where you would want to put it, but I'm thinking like B, like C or low B, something like that.
You know, eh, it might be mean, but I'd probably put it in a C.
C, no, I'm fine with C because it's something that we didn't need, and it was fine for what it was, but it is held back because it is on the DS, and I don't think they cut
Yeah.
any content out. People in the comments will probably get on me about, well, actually, this was in the game, but I don't remember playing it. It's been a long time ago. I mean, I remember playing it, but I don't remember fully beating the game. So it's like, eh.
And hey, if anyone in the comment section wants to be like, well, actually, sometimes that's nice to actually see. Be like,
It is.
oh crap, that thing that we didn't remember, or you know, someone's opinion of, hey, I would actually place this, on the same level or slightly below. That's perfectly fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And yes, I know there was a Sega Saturn version and the PC version, but they're basically director's cut with some added things. We're moving on. we're moving on from Resident 1.
Onward.
Okay, Resident Evil 2. This is a big one, I think.
Yeah. No. If I remember correctly, it's like, wow, God, as it's been a while, it's like, wasn't that one 2 discs? Pretty sure that was
Yes, a Resident
2 discs at
Evil
the time.
2 had a disc for Claire and a disc for Leon because it was 2 different campaigns.
Yeah. God, I remember seeing the preview. It's like one of the demo discs had a preview of it. It wasn't, you couldn't even play it. It just showed you like a little trailer. That thing gave me nightmares.
Well, rightfully so, because Resident Evil 2 is a huge step up from the first game.
Oh yeah.
They introduced more of a city environment with sewers and they had enemies like giant crocodiles and like all these the freaking hunter weren't the hunters in 2?
Yeah,
That's
if
right.
I remember correctly, there were hunters, I think.
Well, for sure, lickers are there.
Oh yeah, no. They might have. It's been so long. You know what? I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. The monsters were a little bit gnarlier. They give you a look at Raccoon City proper, and they do a great job with giving you a sense of scale. You are not isolated anymore, and at the same time, you are still so very much alone in places.
Yeah, it definitely like I've never fully beaten 2. I will admit that. Actually, the very first Resident Evil game I ever beat was 3, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah,
But
that's
I've
next on the list,
seen,
I think.
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. But 2 is you talk to anybody who's a big like survival horror person, and they usually, not all the time, but most of the time, they say that Resident Evil 2 is like top tier. They say like that
Yeah,
because they gave you I mean, Resi 1 gave you Jill and Chris, right, for the
and
campaign,
Barry.
and Barry, yes. But with Resi 2, the scope just seemed bigger. And they fixed a lot of the issues in the first. There's still issues, don't get me wrong, like the tank controls and
Yeah,
everything, but they gave you more ways to outmaneuver enemies in, into. They gave you more of a plot where you actually see someone turning into a tyrant kind of thing because of the G virus.
yeah,
Um,
Birkin.
mhm. And plus, where I almost said Leon, where Chris and Jill's campaigns they mirrored each other pretty closely. It was just who did you decide to meet on your journey, or how easy was the game.
Yeah,
Leon and Claire's still felt like 2 genuine stories being told at the same time from different parts. Like, you don't get all of the
yeah,
same things like in Resi 1. At least that's if I'm remembering it correctly.
yeah. No, and it's like there's a couple of places where you will explore similar areas, but with Leon and Claire, it does feel like you said, you are 2 people technically in the same story, but you do get certain areas, different perspectives, and I'm pretty sure it's with Claire. You're also trying to help Cherry, and of
Yes.
course, Leon has his darling femme fatale.
He's simping hard in that game.
Can you blame him?
No. No, not really. Um but so now I guess the thing is, do you think this is our first S tier?
On this one, yes, absolutely. I think
Ooh.
this is our first S tier.
Yay, sound the trumpets, blare the horns, we have our first S tier.
It's
And it's
like
only game 2.
it builds upon the original.
Yes.
It ups the stakes. It feels like a bigger story, and it still has connections to the originals because it's the aftermath of the mansion incident and just everything falling apart after that. So it's a really great follow up.
Yeah, I also think what we've been talking about with like we had a conversation once about sequels, like what makes a good sequel and like what are some that you
Yeah,
remember the most. And in terms of video games, Resident Evil 2 is, like you said, it plays off the original very well. It really does feel like a straight continuation from the first one, because I know some sequels are good, but maybe there's a different gameplay style, or maybe it's set in a thing where they don't really talk about the first one, but it's the sequel, and things like that. But
yeah, yeah.
before we
Death of
go on a tangent,
Reeking.
Resi
So
2,
yeah, no,
S tier, I
S
agree,
tier.
it works.
Oh yeah.
The N64 port, I say, would probably, just like Deadly Silence, I think it's like a C, because yes, it's technically a
Yeah,
marvel that they even got the thing on the N64, which I highly
they
respect
just
them for
cut out
trying.
so much.
Yeah, I feel like if there wasn't an N64 port, you wouldn't have missed anything except not having a PlayStation to play the game. That's really all
Yeah,
it
it's like
is.
PlayStation was the way to experience it. You had to
Yeah.
play the proper version of it. No offense
So,
to N64 lovers.
oh no, the N64 has really good games, and sometimes the N64 ports are better than the PS1 port. The Dreamcast is a whole nother beast because usually the Dreamcast ports are great, regardless. But yeah, the N64 it just couldn't do the cutscenes, and they had to cut out content because, of course, they did. It was 2 discs, like,
Yeah.
but for what it was, I highly respect it because it's a technical marvel. It's very cool. Um, but now we get to Resi 3. Nemesis, good old Nemesis.
Yay, Nemi.
I really like 3. I'm gonna say it goes in. I know we haven't talked about it yet. I'm gonna put it in A tier already.
Yeah, honestly, I'm just gonna go ahead and solidly put it in A tier as well. I don't think it's better than the second game, and
No.
timeline-wise, it's kind of fiddly when you try to squeeze it in. But it's a solid game with some really interesting ideas, some great set pieces. I like Jill and Carlos.
My thing with it is, yes, Resi 3 is technically a short game, but it was born to be a speedrunner's paradise. It's
Well,
one
they
of those
also pushed the
games.
game out a year later. That
They
was
did.
Resident Evil 2, and it was just like, great, now make us more.
Yeah, because everybody loved 2 so much that they were like, well,
Yeah.
we need a new game. What do we do? And what's funny is originally Jill's campaign was supposed to be in Resi 2, but they just didn't finish it in time or they didn't have enough space. It really just depends on who says what, because I don't really know the full story of
Yeah.
that. But they just,
There
instead
might
of
have been a
scrap,
flow issue as well.
yeah, but instead of scrapping it, they were like, well, let's just make it the third game. And the reason why I think it's an A tier more than anything is because of a little thing known as replayability. When you beat
Oh,
the
yeah.
game, you're able to reuse all your older weapons, but you also can pick different paths. So the story changes, and I think that's really, really cool. I kind of wish modern day Resis had that.
Because for anyone not familiar with Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, there were certain points in the game where Nemesis would pop up, and then you would be prompted with almost a timed event to make a choice. Whereas, like, do you want to hide? Do you want to say F it if you have the ammo and just try and fight this thing? Or do you want to get the F out of there as quickly as possible? And certain choices, if I remember correctly, would have at least some effect
Mm-hmm.
on the gameplay. So yeah, there was that element of, oh hey, I picked this last time. What happens if I do this time? Which was fun. That was really nice to see.
Yeah, it was the first game I ever beat of Resident Evil when I got a Dreamcast from one of my neighbors. He was getting rid of it, so I just got it from him. I got Soul Calibur, Resi 3, and then I think some other game. And I still cannot tell you how terrifying that game is because, and I'm not saying this because I'm a scaredy cat or whatever, Nemesis can literally. I had a moment where I opened up a door and he was immediately there and he immediately one-shot me. What scared me wasn't the fact that Nemesis got me. What scared me was the fact that no door was safe. Nothing was safe in
Yeah.
that game.
No. No, honestly, he was more relentless than Mr. X.
Yes. But okay, cool, awesome. I think we don't need to really say anything more about Resi 3. I think that
Yeah.
solidly put whatever we wanted to say because it's a simple game, but that's why it works.
Yep.
All right, so we went through 1 to 3. would Code Veronica technically be next, or was there another game?
I mean, we should probably at least mention Resi Zero.
Which one was Resident Evil Zero? I actually have not played Zero. What's that one like?
Okay, so...
Oh no, hang on. Let me get the popcorn, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of salt.
Oh, there is. There's going to be quite a bit of salt, because Resi Zero... The premise alone wasn't awful. You take control of, at first, Rebecca, which I was over the moon. Was like, oh boy, I get to have an adventure with Rebecca, and it's set before, a little bit before the mansion event proper, though the timeline for this game is just shrug, really, for what goes on.
I feel like that's most games, though, to be honest. Like, they don't care about where it goes. I mean, Zelda's a good example. Try figuring that shit out. Oh my god, it's terrible.
I'd rather not.
You shouldn't.
But
even Nintendo doesn't know.
Yeah, so you kind of bump into someone who's... You find out more about him during the game. His name is Billy. He is a cootie. And going with the tradition that, Capcom just does not seem to like Rebecca, you're mostly going to be playing as Billy when you're not in Inventory Simulator.
Lame.
So, you can choose to play as either of them. That's the thing with Zero. You play as both characters, you shift between them to do stuff, but it's just, you're mostly gonna be using Billy. You can do everything that Rebecca can do, and a little bit more, for reasons. And most people don't remember Zero for a good reason. I'm gonna put it as D.
Really?
Tier. Yeah, it's just kind of... It is...
It's okay. Say how you feel, friend.
It's like the plot's kind of a mess. It's like it feels like the plot stretches across at least an entire bloody night.
Ew.
And yet, Rebecca still goes to the mansion at the end of it, and it's just like, technically by this timeline, shouldn't that have already gone down, but you're on your way there, and Billy is just gonna off into the wild, never to be seen again. Good riddance. Sorry to any Billy fans out there, I'm sure he's fine.
The more you've talked about this, the more I'm sitting here like, why didn't they just remake Zero?
Honestly, I think if they remake Zero, they're gonna have to do quite an overhaul
I see.
on it. This video will drag on too long if I just ramble
No.
Zero.
That's fine.
Another time.
That's fine.
But upside, yay, Rebecca. Downside, everything else.
That is a shame, because I actually really like Rebecca as a character.
You should probably try to play the game yourself. And if you like the game, I'm not going to throw you out of a window, I promise.
I appreciate that. I haven't played Zero. It was one of those games where I have it digitally, and I'm just like, because it was cheap one day, and I'm like, maybe I'll try it. But everyone I've talked to about Zero, friend of mine that I watched play all these horror games and stuff like that, he never talked about Zero, at least to much as I remember. I never even saw him play Zero. So that must say something if you have a really big Resi fan like you going, yeah, no, this game is not. And to everybody that's a fan of it, this is just our opinion. If you like the game, please defend it in the comments. I would love to read the comments and maybe...
Absolutely. Please, if Billy is your favorite character ever, please tell me why.
Actually, it's funny that we brought that up, because we have another cootie on the list, because now we get to go to Code Veronica.
Frickin' Steve. Now, granted, I know he has some good moments. He's not the worst character ever, but still, frickin' Steve.
You know, as somebody who still is trying his damned best to beat that game, which I don't know why, I should just stop, but I'm already so far in the game, I'm taking it as a personal spite at this point, so I can say that I've beaten Code Veronica and never touch that damn game again. Code Veronica is a very different game than the version that we have on modern systems, the X version. So, for everybody, context, Code Veronica X is technically a remaster slash remake of the game. The original game was on the Dreamcast, if I remember correctly. I think it was only on the Dreamcast. Maybe it was on another system, but I remember it as being a Dreamcast game. Code Veronica, the original, was split into 2 discs like Resi 2, which is a plus, I think, because then if you beat Claire's story mode, you're done, and then you can do Chris's later if you want to. Although it's a little interesting because the intro for Code Veronica original is filled with spoilers for the game. The title screen, I think, includes a thing. Steve resembled Leonardo DiCaprio, but they had to change how he looked in Code Veronica X because, obviously. So I'm trying to think of what else was different than the... We'll talk about what they added into Code Veronica X when we get to it, but this game is kind of like Zero. But I hear more about how this game has fans than Zero. This game is kind of considered like the black sheep, where people either like it or they hate it. There's no middle.
I think the main problem with Code Veronica is it's got good ideas in there. It's got, a good story beat. It's continuing the story. The main issue that I personally always hear is how hard the game is. It's like some poor soul uttered that Resident Evil was too easy, or they beat Resi 3 too quickly, and they were just like, oh really? Would you like more difficulty? Would you like to suffer? Would you like to regret that you said anything at all? You're welcome.
I don't know what it is, but sometimes game developers hear that people are really good at their games, and they're like, so they're good at our games, Would be a shame if we were to up the difficulty. Code Veronica, like you said, there's things there. Like, I'm playing it still currently, and it's kind of fun sometimes, but then you're like, okay, why is this? I had to use a sniper rifle that I picked up to beat this one particular boss, and if you decided to waste that ammo before you got there, you're soft locked.
Oh yeah, there was a I forget which. It's when they used to have a bunch of different gaming magazines that would have walkthroughs. Yeah, that was in there, where they warned you before you ever got to that point, where once you pick this up, do not use this ammo, even if you are already out of ammo. Otherwise, you will never beat the game.
Yeah, I also feel that, like, certain enemies and how they were placed in the game were kind of stupid to the point of, you really want me to use ammo, don't you? I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of the enemies felt spongier than they should have been.
Yes.
Like, especially the frickin' dogs. The dogs were worse than
ever
before.
In every game of Resident Evil, the dogs are terrible.
I know, but in other games, if you've got a shotgun, 1 or 2 hits with a shotgun, you're going to take down the dog. In Code Veronica, it feels like you're either somehow missing the dog, like its hitbox is a little bit different than it has been before, or the dog just took a lot of steroids and it should be bulkier than it looks on the screen.
Yeah, one of our friends who started to play Code Veronica gave up. He didn't even get through the first, a part of the game because he was just like, I had all these arrow gun bullets, and I shot the arrows at dogs and other enemies, and I ran out of ammo. Screw this game. And I'm like, nope, that's valid. That's a fair point.
Yeah. And I can't for the life of me remember if this is only in one version or both versions, but if I remember correctly, I think something that is not indicated in the game is you don't want to pick up everything.
No.
I think Chris comes through the same areas later, and if you've cleared out everything, Chris will have nothing.
I don't know if that's a thing or not. I don't know which version it was. But I wouldn't doubt that that's how it is, because we haven't even put it in a slot on the tier list, but I'm kind of thinking this is like a C as well.
Yeah. I will put it
C for Code Veronica.
A low C, and the only reason it is not no is because there's still something here. It's like, there's a good game screaming to be played, you just have to deal with a lot of BS.
Original game, first off, and second of all, it wasn't meant for casual players. This game was meant for players who know Resident Evil.
This is not a starting point.
Right. This is for people who want a challenge, but I have a lot of patience with games. Sometimes I'll play them and I'll be like, yeah, I won't play them again, but I had a good time. Code Veronica is one of those few games where once I beat this game, I never want to talk about it again.
Yeah.
It's begging for a remake, for sure.
It needs it so badly.
Yeah. Which, hopefully that's the case now, because they've already done 1, 2, 3, and 4, so
odds are it's either 0 or 6. Or
what?
Veronica. Veronica was... no, it wasn't 6. What was it?
Technically, it was Resi 4.
4, that's right. And then we got
Technically.
Resi 4. Oh, that's why I thought it was... Because it's number 6 on the books.
Oh, that's right. They made chapter books of this, huh?
Yeah, which I do recommend. That they're pretty much no longer technically canon because they've changed quite a bit, but they are worth a read if you can actually get your hands on a copy.
Yeah, I actually have the Caliban Cove, and I have the very first one.
Yeah, because I got you the Umbrella Conspiracy to see if you liked it, and you got Caliban Cove because that one's Rebecca's solo, which, yeah, no, both of those books, fantastic.
All right, well, you've heard it here. If you like Resident Evil, go get the books. Apparently they're good.
And there should be reprinted. Now, if you want the original run with the original covers, you're going to pay out the nose, but there should be reprinted versions with new covers that are hopefully more reasonable. Yeah,
that's the ones that I have, because you have the 3D model of the characters that they used for Remake, or the other games that they were in. Okay, well, I think for today's topic, at least, if we're covering the classic games, I guess the last one would be Resi 4, right?
Yes, I would count that because, now granted, it's just in, if I remember, like a text crawl thing. It does kind of close out the whole Umbrella storyline, granted really briefly at the beginning, and it's just, which is funny. Well, you haven't reached the ending of Code Veronica yet, so I won't say.
Yeah. So, Resi for Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Leon, his big grand opus, as a lot of people call it. Gosh, I would say this is either high A or S tier. Because it's not survival horror, it's still... This is the game that implemented more of an action-oriented part of Resident Evil.
I would still say it's survival horror, though, because you do still have to manage your resources. It does just incorporate quite a lot of action-y stuff.
Quick time events were asked.
Yeah, no, the quick time events can go eat a cactus.
Yeah, never was a big fan of quick time events. When they're done right, they're cool, but not your whole game.
I'm sure this is going to be blasphemous, but I do have a reason for this. I'm just going to put 4 in A tier.
I mean, I said that it was going to be A or S, and I'm perfectly fine with A, because it does have problems. Like, everyone treats Resi 4 as like the holy grail of Resi games, but guys, be honest with yourselves. You can glitch the health thing to increase your health, and that's why I stopped playing it for a long time. In the very beginning, I tried to increase my health,
Really?
and oh no, what ended up happening, Lonely, was I had low health, and my thought
Yeah.
process was, oh, if I mix this herb with a one that raises my health bar point
Yeah.
thing, it should still give me the thing. My
It's supposed
total
to.
my total health was the small little bit that I got back from the herb. It decreased my health permanently.
What the heck?
Yep.
Yeah,
This
that
was
is
the
one hell of a glitch.
Yeah, this is the port for the PS4 and Xbox One and the Switch, by the way. So if you're playing that game
Oh,
now, I don't know though.
I played the original.
This might have been in the original game though. I don't know because I tried looking this
Yeah.
up and it looked like no one really knew about this glitch. So just letting you guys know, it's out there, stalking your health bar like a vampire.
And I've never had this problem, so I'm going to be looking at
That's all
rose-colored
right.
glasses at this one.
It's all right. The weird thing with 4 though is that it came out for the GameCube first, and then they re-released it on PS2 after the fact. But it's
Yeah.
basically the same game. I actually would put the Wii version above the normal version that you can even get ported to the PS4 and stuff because of one thing. The Wii version had free aiming mode because of the Wii remote.
Oh.
And it was so much easier to aim at things. They have actually said this is the way to play Resi 4 if you've never played the game, unless you don't have a Wii or have means to play it that way. But that's debatable because if you don't like the free aiming thing, then it's no big deal.
This, I was like, this was one I replayed a lot. Like, a lot. A lot.
That's
No,
not a
it is
bad
not
thing.
because Leon's fabulous, goddammit.
You and thousands of others will agree.
I play RE4 for the plot, I say as I stare at Leon. Nope. Moving on.
I think 4 is also really a fun game because Leon is such a snarky little
His
punk.
sense of humor,
Yes.
it's at least to me it is hilarious, but at the same time it's also just like, really, that's the joke you're gonna go with here? I mean, okay, it's funny, but really.
I think it's funny that you've praised this game a lot, and yet you don't put it in S tier next to Resi 2.
There's a reason.
Explain, because I'm sure everybody is chomping at the bit at why it's not S tier. Oh, this is clearly an S tier game. Oh, you don't know. You're not a real Resi fan.
I'm sure nobody's going to say that, but the reason that I put it in A over S is because of its recent remake, which, spoiler for chatting about that, I would put that above the original. The remake kind of made me realize certain spots in the original were just like, oh, I didn't realize I needed these quality of life fixes or the removal of this entirely.
And the fact that there's no quick time events.
Yes, that is one of the bigger reasons, yes. Because to me, that was just kind of, in a weird way, it was one of my comfort games, where it's just like, yeah, no, I don't feel well, my mood is low. F it, gonna play Resi 4 and laugh at Leon's dumb jokes.
You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has a small stack of games where that's why you play them. Sometimes.
I know, but my stack of comfort games would probably concern people.
But see, you're a fan of survival horror, so if you're fans of survival horror, they might look at that stack and go, ah, yes, a woman of quality.
I am quality. I will never get this praise again.
You putting an A makes sense then, because you grew up with the classic Resi games, and you had a lot of fun playing those. And when you go to games like 4 and the soon to be talked about 5, 6, 7, 8, all those, they are different. Like, they feel different. They're more based on action horror, which is cool. Don't get me wrong. And I think 4, like you said, it was the changing of the guard, so to speak, where they're like, we're still going to keep it horror-esque, but look at all the action we have.
It's at least for certain titles, it's like when you have something that is horror, sometimes it is going to inevitably transition into action because there's only so many times you can do something where your audience gets desensitized to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not as opposed to something that was survival horror moving to actiony stuff. So yeah, it was cool for me to be like, oh no, the spooky, and oh no, the bunch of spooky.
Okay, that's... When you've said that, that actually does make some sense. And I actually think, kind of like Resi 1, it's a good starting point for people who haven't played Resident Evil.
Yeah, for a new generation, I would recommend if you're not really crazy about the what I would consider a little bit more of a slower burn horror, Resi 4 is a good fit.
Okay. So we'll save the remake for when we talk about the other remakes, because I know you have lots of thoughts on those.
Oh yes, so many, which a couple of them are probably going to not earn me any new friends.
Well, that's why I'm here, though, right? I'm that balance, because I don't do a lot of survival horror, but I've played the remakes. I have thoughts about them, so we can get to it there. But I think this is a good place to stop for now, because that's all the classic games, not counting side games. That'll be another thing, too.
Yeah, that gets its own things, otherwise we'll be here all night.
Yeah, for real. It would be a very long... I'll eventually put all the pieces together to make one longer video when we've done them. But for now, yes, I think Resi 4 is a good place to stop, because 5 is when things started to go heavy into the action element.
Along with a few additional changes that we will get to.
But, well, hey, thanks for jumping on for this lonely. It was great talking about this list with you.
Anytime.
Yeah, and I'll get you back for the next part, hopefully soon. So stay tuned for that, everybody. We ain't done yet. The road has become a mountain.
Flee while you can. Flee in terror. Flee for your lives.
All right. See you guys later, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.